Hi, I'm Matt, currently PA student in my clinical year. I'm set to graduate this year, 2017, and I just wanted to make this video about the interview, okay? Um, because the interview is very important, and this is the second half of your application, all right? And I just want to talk about my experience from the interviews that I've been on, and I will talk about questions that I saw during my interviews and the good, the bad, and the ugly from my experience. Okay, I applied to 10 different schools and I got 6 interviews. So I did this 6 different times. All right. So you've done everything you could. You've done all the requirements, all the prerequisites, all the extracurricular stuff, and you look great on paper. All right. And now these schools want to see you. They want to talk to you. They want to see who it is that's applying to their program and why. All right. So again, this is a very important part of getting into PA school, the interview, the second portion of your application. Okay. So the first thing I would suggest and recommend before you go on these interviews, because they're, more than likely you're going to get an interview. You could get one interview and you could get several. All right. And if you only have one interview, you should have everything ready to go, and you should be done everything you could to be prepared for this interview. And the first thing I would suggest is to have your story ready to talk about. Talk about your life story in a nut. I'm not saying life story, but everybody has their own story depending on what their situation is. Everybody is in a different circumstance, and you may be asked about this on your interview. Now, with me, my whole thing was I was a poor student in undergrad, and I did very poorly. I didn't really have any goals, and my GPA reflected that. And these programs, every single one of these programs that I interviewed at, asked me about this. They asked me what happened, and they saw everything that I've done from then up until now, and they just want to know the story behind it. Okay, so my whole thing, again, I was a poor student, didn't really have any goals, and that combined with my father was sick for a short period of time, combined with I was laid off from my first career that I gotten into. I was eventually, a bunch of us were laid off. Everybody was laid off from where I started working, because this was a career change for me. So I had to kind of summarize everything to kind of paint a picture of the person that's sitting in front of these interviewer right now. Okay, so have your story ready to talk about. Okay. Other questions that I will guarantee they're going to ask you. Okay. And I'm just going to go through. It's not. I don't have a whole list because every program has their own set of questions, but these are questions that I noticed that all the programs that I interviewed at asked on the interview. So, why PA school? They're going to ask you, why are you planning on going to PA school? And they want to see what you're going to say with this. All right. And I'll tell you right now, I would not say because med school is too long, too expensive, too this and that. I would not compare PA school to med school, or your choice as far as that. Okay, that's number one, and that's what I believe why they want it. That's why they ask this question, because they want to see if if you're gonna say something stupid. All right, and so why PA school? The next question, or I wouldn't say it's the next question, but it's going to be asked as well. And this is, again, every program that I interviewed at asked me, why this school? Okay, why are you applying to our school? So in that case, you're going to have to research the school. All right, you're gonna have to know the background, know some things about the school, know some of their other programs, know some of their other, um, know about the neighborhood and the area that it's located, and some background history. All right, they want to see if you're knowledgeable about where you are applying to, and you're not just applying to their school to add to your list of PA schools. Okay, so do your research on the school, the program, and anything you can, um, before going to the interview. All right. Another thing that I noticed I was asked, another question was about my study habits. They want to ask me about, a lot of them ask me about my study habits in one way or another. They might just ask you, how do you plan on studying, um, if you get into the program, or they'll ask you something that relates to your study habits, because PA school is a whole different animal from any other schooling that I've been through, and you're gonna see that. All right, it's demanding of study time is insurmountable. I just always feel like when I was in, and I still feel like that when I'm in my clinical year, but especially in the first didactic year, I felt like I needed to be studying nonstop all the time, and that's just me. It's not, somebody else might study differently and are better at that, but me, I constantly always had to study, and they want to know your study habits if you're able to handle the workload that you're given. All right, so be prepared to answer that as well. Um, Another thing that I was asked, and I always had this ready to go as well, was describe to me, or describe to them, a situation at work or some situation where you're working with somebody or a group of people, or a situation where you're working and something went wrong, or you're working with somebody who happened to have, who was giving you some kind of difficulties, at work or in some kind of project, and they're going to want to know what you did and the steps that you took to overcome that. All right. I don't want to say every school asked me this, but multiple schools, maybe 3 or 4 of the schools that I interviewed at out of the 6 asked me something like that. Okay. So think about something, because going into that blindly and not knowing that question is going to be asked, you might think and sit there for a while and maybe not have anything or story to go with that. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, they want to see how you overcome, because again, being a PA, is you're working as a team with other individuals. Okay, and things can happen. All right. So that another thing is, some throw off questions that I can remember. Now, I don't remember a whole lot, but I remember on my first interview, one of the first questions, or maybe the first question that I got, was, tell me a day in the life of a PA, or tell me what it's like as a PA, or uh, describe your day in 5 years from now. Okay, pretty much they want to see, what you know about what it is to be a PA. And I wasn't expecting that question, and I was like, I kind of wanted more elaboration. She's like, okay, you wake up, you have your breakfast, then what? So she wanted me to go through the whole day as a PA, and it was a difficult question because it all depends on the setting. It all depends on the specialty, and I forgot what I said. I think I said, you go to your job, and you do your rounds, and I was thrown off with that question. I kind of forgot how I answered it, or if I answered it enough. I just forgot. But that was one of my very first questions, out of the 6 schools that I interviewed. And remember, this for me, this was 2 years ago. So I'm trying to remember as much as I could, that could help you. but those questions that I mentioned before will definitely be asked. All right. Another thing that threw me off, and I believe you're going to be asked this. Multiple schools will ask you this, um, is to give some negative qualities about yourself or something that you feel you could work on. All right, and a lot of people, a lot of you are used to talking great things about yourself. You know, you're not used to talking about yourself in a negative light, and you're not expecting to do that going into an interview where people are expecting you to be great. Okay, so um, think about that, because talking about yourself in a negative way is not easy to do. It's easier said than done, and I had to really pause when I was first asked that as well, and kind of think about um, a negative quality that won't kind of bury me and make me look so bad where they won't have anything to do with me. So think about a quality that you might need, you can work on, but in a productive way. Um, you know, that would make you look good. Um, and I kind of don't remember what I had said during these interviews as far as that question, but it's something to keep in mind, okay? Um, so those are pretty much the gist of it. And again, every program is different. Every program, they're not gonna, they have their own way of trying to get to know you personally, or try to get to see your character and personality. They want to see your personality. Um, but those questions are what I saw um, for the most part across the board. Um, some other things to think about as far as some pointers is go early. Go to your interview, get there early, get there on time. Now, I mentioned the good, the bad, and the ugly from my experience. And there was one interview, and it happened to be the school that I really wanted to go to. And my alarm didn't go off. I must have turned the volume down or something. And I woke up and I had, I don't even know how much time to get there, but essentially I was late for the interview. I was 10 minutes late. As soon as I got there, they were fine, and everybody was saying, "Don't worry about it. Just go, hurry up. Just go into this room." And they were giving a lecture and a presentation. But I knew that even though that they said it's fine, I know somebody kept note of that, and it didn't look good. And I remember I was rushing to get ready. I remember I cut myself shaving, so I had this gash on my cheek, and it just was a bad interview for me. I was flustered, and it was bad. Okay, so get there early. Set 2 alarms. If it's early in the morning, most of the likely it's going to be early in the morning. Set more than one alarm just to be safe. Okay, and get there early. Another thing to keep in mind as a pointer is, so these interviews are structured. There's going to be different things going on at once. It's not just an interview. You're showing up, you interview, you talk. They're going to have presentations. They're going to have maybe they're going to have discussions. They might have some group things. They're going to have tours of the facility and of the campus. And then this little bit, 10 minutes or 20 minutes, is the actual interview. And you're going to probably be there for, the first half of the day. And a little bit of it is the actual one-on-one interview with somebody. So it's a lot. It's overwhelming, and it's kind of nerve-wracking. So just be cool, and I know it's easy to say that, but just relax, because what I noticed from the interviews, the majority of the interviews I went on, they were really relaxed conversations with people. That's all it was a relaxed conversation. And so they want you to be comfortable as well, so you can talk about things that motivate you. All right, they want to see your energy and your passion for this. So with that being said, these schools that interview you are going to use current students in one way or another. They're going to use students in some form. At least every interview that I went on, students were involved, current students. They were either asking me questions as part of the interview, or they were just talking to us casually in groups. Some of them had lunch that they would hold, and we'd be able to ask them questions. But every school involved their current students. And I remember when I was in PA school, when I was in my didactic year, like the first couple of months, they were already starting interviews for applicants for the upcoming year. And I was, I was feeling, I'm only a few months into the program myself, but here I am talking to potential applicants, and they asked students to go and talk to the applicants. And with my school, they said, if you notice anybody that might stand out, or you just, are something about this applicant that, you think would be good for this program, to mention it and tell us. So keep that in mind. You never know on these interviews what these students are thinking or remembering about you, or try to think of, it could something that would make you stand out or stick out, and to have these students remember you that way. They may or may not, give you a good word. They want to know from the current students if they see anybody that they could give a good word about. All right, and also, so with that, if you could, on these interviews, with the faculty, or whenever you do your one-on-one interview, if you have the opportunity to name drop somebody, they love that as well. If you know somebody who's in the program now, or if you have a family member, or somebody who went to the school, or somebody that you could name, or maybe you talked to a faculty member before applying to the program, and you remember, and you had this conversation before you even interviewed or applied. You said, I talked to the dean of admissions, and we had a conversation, and and it's just anything that you could do to name drop if possible. I'm just just a pointer. That's I lost my light. It's just a pointer that you could do that might help you with your interview. Another thing about the interview is that you're gonna be given a writing assignment, and some people are nervous about this part, and I'm telling you, don't be nervous at all. All the programs, at least everyone that I've interviewed at, asks to do a writing assignment, and it's a subject that they give you when you get there, and it's something very simple. It's nothing crazy. They're not going to ask you to redo the Krebs cycle or anything. It's just something that they can see that you know how to write, and that you're the one who wrote your personal statement. They want to see your writing abilities, and it's usually like a few paragraphs. They'll either give you a subject. I remember at the time when I interviewed, one of the subjects was about domestic violence. That was going around a lot in the media at the time with sports, and they asked us to write about that topic and how we felt about domestic violence as far as like PA involvement. I remember another writing assignment was a situation where a doctor, something about a doctor, it involved like a medication, and it was something where you were conflicted about what the doctor did, and he did something unethical, and how you would go about handling it. Okay, and that's two things that I remember from the writing assignment. Other than that, it's really something that's pretty straightforward. It's nothing crazy, but there is going to be a writing assignment to do during the interview, so be prepared for that. Okay, so I hope this helps. Again, subscribe. I'm sorry that my light keeps going on and off. So if anything else, ask me. Feel free to ask questions, and I'll try to upload any other videos going forward. All right, take care.